This information you are about to hear and perhaps view, these are not necessarily the thoughts or the ideas of Gary C.Clement or the Gary Clement Radio Show podcast. We are in no way, shape, or form affiliated with the parties this story is about or was interviewed for. Parts of this content may not be owned by or the property of the Gary Clement Radio Show podcast, D2 Network Media, or any other company we are affiliated with, and this information is strictly the opinion of those being interviewed. This content is for information purposes only, and although we may make reference to various news stories, we share our own independent beliefs about the content and provide our own opinions. Please enjoy the information. Yes, this is Gary Clement from the Gary Clement Radio Show podcast, and today we have a gentleman on the phone who is the grandson of a legend. Back in the day, Jack the Rapper Gibson was the premier radio disc jockey, and his Jack the Rapper convention was the event to be part of. Everybody attended. I mean, the who's who of urban music attended. Pro basketball stars, Hollywood actors, political figures, porn stars even. They were all there. And today on the show, we have the grandson of Mr. Jack Gibson to share his story. His name is Ein Gibson. How are you, sir?
Hey, how are you doing? Nice to meet you, brother. Okay. Nice to meet you.
Great.
It's an honor and a pleasure to be on your show.
So tell me now, you were telling me earlier that you were like your grandfather's sidekick when you were growing up. Tell me a little bit about that, please. Let's go back a little bit so people can kind of get a gist of who I am. Most people in the business know my Aunt Jill. Jamila, his daughter. I am the son of actually his son. There's Joseph III, which was my father. At the age of 3 and 4, me and my older brother Nakia started to live with our grandparents. My grandfather Jack, that you know, and my grandmother Sadie, who you probably knew too. So to me, as a little kid, you know, you always take to someone. There's always somebody as like your hero or somebody that's like a Superman to you. And for me, that was who Jack, my grandfather was to me. It just so happened that I liked dancing and singing and stuff like that from really, really early. And for better words, it tickled him. So he pretty much always had me at his hip. And at 5 years old, my first introduction to the business was actually, it's a funny story, and I'll tell you about that a little bit in a bit, was 1985 was the first convention that I went to. But before that, I remember running around his office and like stapling the old Mellow Yellows and taking out the garbage and all sorts of stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Okay, so I guess, you know, just as far as your grandfather's concerned, you know, what do you miss most about him?
Oh man, that's okay. So for me, it's personal. I knew him. Most people knew Jack the Rapper. I knew Papa, what the family, all the grandkids, we call him Papa. And for me, Papa was like he was my best friend growing up. We would always hang out. We would always watch funny movies, and he always liked funny stuff. He always liked stuff that make him laugh and tickle him. So it's a lot of stuff like that, hanging out with him and get like in particular when he lived in Las Vegas before he died a couple years. He loved like the buffets, and we get up in the middle of the night, it'd be about 2 or 3 in the morning, be like, come on in. And we go down the buffet and we'd be laughing, just eating, you know. Then we were just like old, you know, it'd be like old friends. So I really missed that. I really, really, really missed that. And I have daughters now, and whenever I get a chance to be like that with them or my nephew and nieces, it comes out. Okay. So I really miss that about them.
Okay, I understand. Great. Okay, so as far as, you know, like you said, you were 5 years old when you first began going to Jack the Rapper. So I would say give you 5 years, maybe, you know, until up nearing the end of it or whatnot, where you kind of really understood, you know, what it meant to be at Jack the Rapper. You know, when you actually figured out who your grandfather really was, what did that do to you? How did it change your whole world, I guess?
Oh, you mean when it hit me?
Yeah,
Like
yeah, right,
who?
exactly.
Okay,
Yes.
okay. So, hmm, that's a good question. Well, if, to be honest with you, really early. Um, but I guess where I noticed that other okay, so for me, being in the industry and being around people was very normal, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but when people like when I guess when I got to like middle school, when kids would kind of talk about it,
Mm-hmm.
that's when it was a little different. That's when I know like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
okay, so people outside the business know, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and these kids only kind of heard little things here and there. So it was maybe maybe about 12
Okay. Mm-hmm.
when I kind of like okay when a little kid would say oh yeah he's a man, you know what I mean, like maybe around 12, 13, around those times where the impact of what it meant to what he really meant in the industry and what like uh all the people that came afterwards and I got to see it.
Mm-hmm.
it that it that is yeah it was like right before going into my teenage years.
I see. Okay. Because hey, at that time, like I said, everybody was around. I remember Queen Latifah going to the stage, and
Hmm.
Heavy D, and and like you said,
Yeah.
I was 20, I was like 21 years old or something. So you were significantly younger than I was. Okay. And
Yes.
and
Yep.
it shocked me. So I know that, as a kid and you see these people on TV and all of a sudden they're right here in front of you, what did that do to you?
Well, it was kind of funny because okay, so it was kind of reversed for me. I would see people before they would come out on TV
Hmm.
every year,
Hmm.
like because you've been to the convention. Remember how the labels would bring their new acts to break them to the industry, and they would have the luncheons and stuff, and that's that you would see like an established artist, but then they would bring like their new signees.
Right, right. Hmm. Yeah.
So I tell people I actually watch hip hop grow up.
Okay.
Literally,
Hmm.
as a kid, I literally watched it grow up. Like at least in the business, I watched it because my grandfather had that show called Rapping in the AM, and that was like my favorite show to go to as a kid. That
Okay.
was at 12 o'clock. That's where all the rappers would go,
Hmm.
and all the new guys that would come out.
Hmm.
I would go to school maybe like because we had the convention in August, and for me, I'd go back like that next week after it was done,
Hmm.
and I would tell kids about all the new guys coming out before they ever heard them.
Okay, cool.
So it was kind of funny. It was kind of, but then to see them that next year after they had blown up, and I
Hmm.
had remembered them, they remembered me. That was cool. Now
Okay.
that was cool.
Hmm.
That was really cool because that's actually how over the years that's actually how I got my little nickname. Like I never was called Little Jack the Rapper until that rapper named Redman that came started coming every year. He started to notice me. He said, "Oh, this is Little Jack the Rapper.
Hmm.
This Little Jack the Rapper," and that's how I got that nickname. My grandfather never even called me that,
Cool.
but it
Hmm.
came from that, from what you're asking. So
I see.
it was kind of a bugged out. It was kind of a bugged out thing
I see.
for a
Okay.
kid to grow up in all that. Like I tell people, like it was kind of that was odd. It was special, but it was really kind of funny.
Right, right. Gotcha. Okay. And you mentioned about being able to hang around the office or whatnot with him as he was putting, his magazine, The Mellow Yellow, together.
Oh
Uh,
yes.
Talk a little bit about that process if you remember anything.
Oh okay. I can. It's funny. I can close my eyes and pretty much tell you exactly how it ran and everything. Okay, so for me as a kid going there, uh, there was always uh, Aunt Billy. A lot of people might know you as Grandpa's like right. That was Papa's Grandpa's right hand Billy Love.
Yep.
So that was
Mm-hmm.
I called everybody like Aunt somebody or that everybody was like Aunt something or, or Uncle somebody. So there was Aunt Billy.
Uh-huh.
Um, there was Aunt Cent. She was the secretary. You guys might have probably
Mm-hmm.
talked to her back in the day. Called in Cynthia Hawkins. There's Aunt Cent.
Uh-huh.
Um, uh, and there was people over time that was there and then that wasn't there. There was like Aunt Winky that worked there for a while and then she wasn't there. And that's when Aunt Cent came in. There was my Uncle Butch that was kind of like Grandpa's kind of security kind of whatever. And he's actually the guy responsible for my dad meeting my mother.
Okay.
So there's a lot of that. You know what I mean? I remember like the gold plaques on the wall. I remember like a picture of like Jasmine guy from a different world had sent Grandpa a picture with an autograph. I remember Michael Jackson uh, stuff all over the wall where he sending to Uncle Jack, love you and blah 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 blah. So I remember all this stuff. I remember people calling in. I remember Grandpa calling people out for ads, and I remember people calling in for subscriptions and making sure they got it, and going to the Drake's printer and making sure the thing was printed. I remember going into Grandpa had like this little back office where before they wasn't doing computer, so there was no graphic art, so he was doing like the scratch off letters, and I remember helping him do that, all that type of stuff. So, and that was over like, this is my early childhood. This is like 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Okay.
So, yeah, I remember it like it was yesterday.
Right. Wow.
Sometimes I can close my eyes and smell the office,
I hear you.
what it smelled like. You know what I mean? What the bathroom actually smelled like. Like I can smell certain cleaners and be like, oh yeah, they use that cleaner in the bathroom.
Right. I
Like
hear you.
that's how much I spent time in that office.
Over the years, your grandfather was responsible for writing the Mellow Yellow, promoting and opening doors for many black artists, as well as finding advertisers, planning the convention, and then some other things. And there were different events that happened to kind of discourage him from being the person that he always wanted to be. Tell us what you remember.
Do you remember Jackie Wilson?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, remember Grandpa? I remember Grandpa doing this thing about helping Jackie Wilson get his grave stone,
Okay.
and I remember how that was a kind of a thing. You know what I mean? Because it was, people were doing donations, and
Mm-hmm.
uh, it wasn't the easiest thing to do. You know
Right.
what I
Right.
mean? And,
Mm-hmm.
and I remember when they were trying to get the Dr. King holiday like national, like like federal holiday,
Right.
and I remember how like him. I remember kind of him talking about that little bits and pieces because I was so young, but I remember him talking about like stuff like that at the dinner table, and I remember that was kind of a thing. You know what I mean?
Right.
And that was early on. And then there's later on when the convention, when probably everybody kind of knows in the business now that anybody knows about my grandfather knows about like the 93 and 94 conventions. I'm probably sure you'll bring that up later, but
Mm-hmm.
that of course that was a thing, with us because it was a family business. So of course,
Right.
I'd hear it and hear stuff about it.
Mm-hmm.
And especially by that time, going in like 93, 94, I'm like 13 and 14. So I'm old enough to understand certain things
Right. Mm-hmm.
and be feeling myself and feel certain changes.
Mm-hmm. Earlier, you also shared with me that there are a variety of companies, artists, and entertainers who have approached you all about honoring Jack the Rapper. What can you share with me about those things?
Okay, so I can't, like I told you before,
Mm-hmm.
there is certain things that I can't, unfortunately, at this time,
Right.
let out the bag. Um, but as far as the past,
Mm-hmm.
um, I know my Aunt Jill has uh, been at award shows to accept certain awards on his behalf. I think maybe the Georgia Music Hall of Fame.
Mm-hmm.
I,
Okay.
I, I had to ask for a little bit more information about that, but
Mm-hmm.
that's one of the things that I heard. And um, there's always like mentions here and there
Mm-hmm.
of people like Diddy does like the Revolt, and that was a couple years back, and my grandfather was talked about, and I was called, and so over time, hearing it's like here and there. We'll hear things and we'll get asked to do things, you know what I mean? But it just seems like nowadays it's becoming a little bit more consistent,
Mm-hmm.
if that makes sense.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I guess somehow, some way, and I guess, I always talk about it because I'm always online, and I dance, and a lot of people know me through dancing, and I'm always talking about it, and I guess people associate you with who you're related to and what your roots, so that's always going to be there. So I guess maybe it's just that time, as my grandfather would say. Things come back around and people want to know, and hip hop has become, like in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and all these people, so I'm pretty sure, Jack the Rapper's name has definitely come up.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just one of those, it's just that time.
Right. Okay. Because I was going to ask you, do you think that Jack the Rapper has actually gotten the respect, a level of respect that he should have, from being
No,
such a pioneer? Okay. Go ahead.
no,
Go ahead.
no. He has gotten some recognition, but overall, the overall impact, in my personal opinion, and not being biased as his grandson, just being like if I was on the outside looking in, no, he has not. Um, because if you look at, okay, so okay, let me go for it this way. When I was younger, I remember there was a thing called black music,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And black music was, you know, soul, R&B, gospel, jazz, and so forth down the line, right?
Right.
What's the dominant music of today now? What music has taken over everything?
Hip hop. Hip.
Exactly,
Yeah.
black, what we would call black music, right?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Who is the one? Who is the so if it's hip hop, then who's the one that gave them their respect in the industry? Who's the one that fought for them to have the level with all the labels? Who's the one that taught Master P and all them about points? That's Jack the Rapper.
Right. Right. I got you. I hear you.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. I
So
hear you.
I have this saying: if you're in music now, all roads lead back to Jack the Rapper.
Right.
All of
Mm-hmm.
them do. You know what I mean? In my opinion, it's a shame my grandfather is not in that Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, like Alan Freed or people like that.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You know what I mean? So that's one of my personal quests. Of I guess you say picking up the reins or following in his footsteps or stepping into his shoes, however you want to put it.
Right.
You know what I mean? That's
Mm-hmm.
how I feel about that. No, he hasn't got his props, as they would say like that. He's gotten some, but the overall, no. And
I
I
see.
think maybe I have a feeling that it's coming.
I see. Okay.
I mean, it's coming.
Okay. Hmm. Now you were talking about your career. Tell us a little bit about the things that you do or whatnot as an artist, and what you're doing now.
Okay, so it's kind of funny. Um, I started dancing as a kid and drawing and doing art, so I just kept doing it as I got along. Um, for many years, I just went to straight dancing, and a lot of people call it street dancing or whatever, breaking, popping, locking, and that became a serious form for me. And I started to teach, started to get students from overseas, and I was really into that world, that scene for many, many years, and still currently active in music. I've uh, been into like production since I was a kid. I learned from my older brother, and we learned on like the old MPCs and all the old, all that old equipment. And then as years went by, naturally went to like computers and so I do hip hop, and but mostly I do right currently really I make guitars, and I do like more like funk and rock and blues. I'm more of a rock blues guy. I'm not really a hip hop kid. It's
Hmm.
kind of funny, even though I grew up on it. But I tend to took more influence from like Jimi Hendrix and Led Zeppelin and Lenny Kravitz and Little Richard and Muddy Waters and Howlin' Wolf and people like that. That was just more what I was into
Hmm.
musically.
Right. I see. Okay.
That's more my influence.
Okay, cool. So, do you
Mhm.
perform out anywhere now, or that's something you developing, or?
Right now, I'm developing. I'm developing a new band.
Mm-hmm.
Currently in the works now. Um, that's one of my biggest projects. Um, I'm always doing some kind of art. I'm always painting. I'm always drawing. I do a lot of custom stuff for people. In the dance world, I do actually a lot of custom uh, clothing gear because a lot of the stuff that we do as far as the dance forms that we do, a lot of the stuff is based off of like, like old 70s dances, right?
Right.
So a lot of the clothes that we like to wear, you cannot buy anymore. You can't just go to like, like Dillard's or like, the mall or somewhere and just get it. A lot of times you can't even order it. So you have to learn how to make it.
I see.
So a lot of that stuff, a lot of the custom stuff that we wear in the dance world, I make a lot of that stuff for people too.
Cool. Very good. Okay. Very good.
Hmm.
Okay. So, as far as carrying on your grandfather's legacy,
Hmm.
what kind of ideas do you have to possibly try to do that?
Okay, so I know the family, we wanted to do a documentary, at, at least start there for years.
Uh huh.
You know what I mean? That's always been a thing, and a lot of people have asked it because I get two questions as far as that when people realize who I am.
Uh huh.
First thing they say is, first question, I'm pretty sure you probably asked it, you guys ever gonna do another convention again? That's the first.
That's a
That's
good
the
one.
first question.
That's a good one.
That's the first question. I'm probably sure you would probably ask that question.
Right.
Um, the second one is, are you guys like? Would you guys do a movie or documentary or something?
Mm-hmm.
That's like usually the second question. Okay,
Okay.
so let me answer the let me answer the question I was already getting on.
Okay.
Yeah, we want to do a documentary, and that's like really the first thing we really trying to really get on.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like trying to get on the same page so we can get that done. I know that's like I've talked to my aunt Jill about it, my cousin Lewis. You know what I mean? We've all expressed it, even like like some of us Gibsons that you don't know, like my sister and stuff. We've all expressed the same thing. We've always thought that should happen.
Mm-hmm.
And then like over times we said like, yeah, there should be a Jack the Rapper movie, or yeah, there should be a Jack the Rapper TV show. We always, because there's so much there.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? His career is so long, from his Jockey Jack days to the Jack the Rapper days.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Right.
There's so much there. There's so much, like, from like a writer's standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's so much content that you can pull from his life and his career. So, and I'm talking about historic stuff. You know what I mean? Like we're
Right.
talking about like uh culture, like like civil rights movement and stuff like that. Black music and just so much stuff. So like we've always we've always been on the same page. Like there should be something, but the only thing we've always like said in stones, like, yeah, documentary definitely, because a lot of people are like, I've heard of Jack the Rapper, but I don't know exactly who he is and what he did. So
Mm-hmm.
we always like the documentary will be the thing that really put it in stone to people's head who he was, so that won't be a question anymore. So if we do a movie or a TV show, you already have an idea.
Mm-hmm.
Now the second question, now that's the $1 million question.
Mm-hmm.
Um, will there ever be another convention? All I can say is never say never.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Never say never, because it's something that I've always wanted to do again, because it was the best thing I ever went to as a kid, and just period. It's like the greatest thing in the world to me. You know
Right.
what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and for other people, it's just as much. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But then for our family, it's a very touchy thing.
Mm-hmm.
Without him, it's like, I guess for us, it's like probably we feel like something's missing.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like And sometimes some of us feel like you couldn't do it without him. Like he was the convention.
Right,
You know what I
right.
mean?
Mm-hmm.
So like that's why I said never say never. It's a touchy, with us Gibsons, it's a touchy thing, and it's our legacy. It's my grandfather's legacy. It's our legacy,
Mm-hmm.
and so forth and so forth. So it's just something that the only thing I could really say at this point about it is never say never. But
Right.
personally, would I ever want to come back? Oh, you bet you. You bet you. As my grandfather would say, excuse me if I'm allowed to cuss, you bet your ass. You know what I mean? Oh, yeah. You know what I mean? If it was up to me, just me personally, I'd love it. I'd love to come back.
Right, right.
And, I would love it to come back from now, just talking to you in my head. I'd love to come back in the next, at least maybe 2 years.
Right. I hear you. I
I'd
got you.
love it to. You know what I
Right.
mean? But unfortunately for me, it's not just my decision.
Yeah, I
You know what I
understand.
mean? There's a lot of factors that go into that.
Right. I hear you. Well,
You know what I
because
mean?
like I say, from my personal experiences, having actually I've experienced it 3 times. I tell you, I've never in my life been to nothing like that before.
Yeah,
Oh my
and
God.
you're right. Because it was I tell people it was like having Woodstock every year, but Woodstock don't even compare to really what it was.
Right, right. Absolutely. That's right. Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
it was like a moment in time.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like Papa would say, he caught lightning in a bottle. You know
Got
what I
you.
mean?
Okay.
And it
Very
flowed with
good.
it.
Okay.
And
So
it grew into its own entity.
okay. So for people that, are interested, in learning more about Jack the Rapper, learning more about what you do and who you are,
Uh,
what's your contact information?
okay, so on Facebook, because I am on social media. So on Facebook, and excuse me, audience, I'm not, unlike my grandfather, I'm not as savvy with everything, but I will tell you what you can do, how you can find me. So on Facebook, all you have to do is you type in your little letters, peoples. So your little names, and you know how you find your little people. So you type in Ian, EINND, as in dog, Gibson, Gibson. And trust me, my name is probably the most unique spelling of Ian that you've ever heard of, and it'll be easy to find me. On Instagram, you can find me at little_Jack_the_rapper. And please feel free to message me, text me. I'm a very open person. I don't mind answer questions. I don't mind you know uh, giving interviews or talking. That's what I'm here for, and I think that's what my grandfather would want me to do.
We really do appreciate our guests who participated in this episode, and we hope you learned something that will bless your day and your life. For all who are interested in learning more about the Gary Clement Radio Show podcast, please visit www.amazon.com and order my book, The Gary Clement Radio Show, When Strong Afro-American Men and Women Stand Up. It covers everything about us and features a variety of Afro-American personalities who speak out about the importance of education and literacy in the Black community. Well, we thank you for tuning into our podcast. Please send us your email address so we can contact you when we have new releases and new episodes and new projects as well. You can reach us at gccpresents@yahoo.com. And also, if you're interested in submitting any materials or want to get in touch with us, please do so by simply sending an email to gccpresents@yahoo.com. That's G as in Gary, C as in Charlie, C as in Charlie, presents@yahoo.com. So until next time, do take care. And this is a G2 Network Media production.